Hello and welcome back to my Super Monkey Ball review marathon, where today we're taking a look at the first game in the series released on 7th gen hardware. That's right, it's Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz for the Wii. Those of you with sharp eyes might have noticed that I've already reviewed Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz HD, which was released in 2019 for the Switch, PS4, Xbox One and PC. So with that being a HD remaster of the Wii game, why am I bothering to review the original? Well, it turns out that quite a few changes were made to the HD remaster that actually make the two versions of the game feel extremely different, so I feel that these changes warrant making two videos on the game. The most obvious change here is that the original Banana Blitz uses motion controls to move the monkeys around, rather than the traditional analog stick controls used in both the original games and Banana Blitz HD. While the motion controls do actually work fairly well for the most part, and I actually found it really easy balancing on narrow ledges, the implementation of motion controls negatively affects the game in several ways. Firstly, when the level design becomes a bit more challenging in Worlds 7 and 8, you really begin to feel a lack of precision when compared to the analog stick input of prior games. Courses which would normally be relatively simple caused massive frustration because it's awkward making precise corrections to movement without overcorrecting and making mistakes. I also found that it was very difficult to make extremely fast movements too. So if you need to speed up, slow down or turn harshly, you can't really do that with these motion controls. Whereas on an analog stick, it's as easy as moving your thumb slightly. Another problem caused by motion controls is that the level design rarely suffers due to having to be balanced with this less precise control scheme. The levels very often feature guardrails preventing you from even having the option of falling off of stages, even if you wanted to. Paths will now be much wider than previously seen in the series, and the game as a whole is extremely easy. That is until you hit the previously mentioned worlds where a huge difficulty spike appears out of nowhere. I think the issue with this game is that it doesn't know if it wants to be a classic Monkey Ball game, which is extremely challenging but rewarding to master and conquer, or whether it wants to be a more casual experience that's more akin to a party game. So it tries to be both at the same time and kind of results in a frustrating mess because it's too hard for casual players, and it's mostly too easy for veterans of the series. And then even when the levels do get harder to cater to the veterans, it then becomes irritating because you don't have the precise controls that you used to. I feel like they should have committed more to the casual demographic for this game. With it being a Wii launch title, they were obviously after a new audience here. This is shown by having infinite continues, unlocking lives after collecting 20 bananas rather than 100, and of course, the implementation of motion controls. And they should have just made Banana Blitz a much easier experience, and then simultaneously made a classic Monkey Ball game with the controls we're all used to for the more advanced players. But here we are in the year 2020, and we're yet to see that new classic Monkey Ball game. Another new thing added into this game is the ability to jump, and while this sounds interesting at first, it's kinda just not used very much. It's used for some basic platforming in some levels, but really, the game could have done without this. Plus, fundamentally, I think jumping in Super Monkey Ball gets rid of a lot of the challenge of mastering advanced maneuvers in the original games. Some of the stunts you're able to pull off by simply bouncing from a height or using momentum to your advantage was a much more rewarding experience than simply having the ability to bypass all of that by jumping. Maybe if it had been implemented more interestingly into the levels, my opinion on this would be different. But it really doesn't add anything other than these bits where you need to jump up these massive flights of stairs for no reason. How do you like that for action-packed gameplay? By far the worst thing Banana Blitz brings to the table though is boss battles. I absolutely can't stand these. They're all awkward because of the control scheme, and the style of gameplay isn't suited to this arena-based combat where the camera is locked onto the enemy and you have to quickly move to avoid attacks and hit weak spots. Because the camera is locked onto the enemy, you can never see where you're going, so you'll fall off of the stage or bump into other enemies. The bosses have ridiculous hitboxes for themselves and their attacks, making it so you can be bumped off of the stage just by wind-up animations rather than the attacks themselves. And yet the weak spots and your monkey have tiny hitboxes, making it so you need to be spot-on accurate when you bump into them to actually deal damage. And because of this, it just ends up feeling so unbalanced and unfair. The last boss in particular was such a goddamn pain. He has loads of different attacks, a massive hitbox, he's huge, the floor moves, and there's a timer counting down while the fight goes on too. Honestly, I kinda just completed this boss by sheer luck. The timer was about to end, so I just ran in and tried to land one final hit, and I managed to do it just after the timer finished, but luckily, it still counted. I mean, look, even the time over text and voiceover happened. Why they decided to put bosses into this game, I've got no idea, but they're by far the worst thing about the entire experience, and I can't believe they also left them in for the HD version too. It's bad enough they're in the original game, never mind the remaster. What makes the bosses worse is that in order to clear each world without using a continue, which unlocks a crown icon on the level select screen, you need to not only do the standard levels, which get really tough in the later worlds, but you also need to do the boss of each world too. All without losing a continue. That's got to be a goddamn joke. There's not a chance that I'm going for 100% in this game, it's way too unfair to even attempt it. I did the first 5 worlds and I could probably do the 6th, but the 7th and 8th would be so difficult that it's just not worth my time. Some of the later levels literally feel like they're trolling you. Like here in this level, not only do you need to go down a winding spiral platform, but then you need to jump into this half pipe where balls are rolling toward you, and they knock you off of the stage if they hit you. Then after getting past that, you need to jump out of the half pipe onto a narrow path, and then roll up this almost vertical ramp using a speed boost. Then you land on a tiny platform and go through the goal. All of this while on a time limit, and all while using motion controls. And that's one level. Why did they make you do so much here? Why not split this into 2 levels for God's sake? It's too much. Then there's this level which has these speed boost pads all over the place, which are literally there just to kill you. They make you blast off of the path, or they make you go too fast off of ramps, forcing you to fall off of the stage. Why do this? It just makes it so you feel like you can't trust the level design. It turns out that there's actually a total of 10 worlds to unlock, the first 8 of which just unlock one after another after finishing the previous one. But the 9th world only unlocks if you finish all of the previous worlds without using a continue. I mean, this is mad. There can't be many people on the face of the earth who have actually done this, surely. The motion controls, unfair level design and boss fights make this feat almost impossible in my opinion. And it's not like the original games where it's a fun challenge, because here the level design and everything else I just mentioned stops the game from being enjoyable. Then to unlock the 10th and final world, you need to do the 9th world without losing a continue, but if it's harder than World 8, then screw that too. This is actually rectified in the HD version of the game, which just has the 9th and 10th worlds unlocked normally, like every other world. And this was definitely the right decision. Actually, the HD version of the game makes several other improvements to the original, which looking back on it, makes me appreciate the HD version a little bit more. The menus are completely different in the HD version, being much more modern and slightly easier to navigate. The music is mostly all different in the HD version, and the title theme in particular is perhaps one of the best things about the entire game. The level music in the HD version probably isn't quite as good as it was in the original though, and apparently the reason they had to change it was due to licensing issues with the original soundtrack, which is a bit of a bummer. Making up for this though, there's a lot more to unlock in the HD version, having different skins for each character, as well as unlocking Sonic the Hedgehog as a bonus too. Whereas in the original, you don't unlock anything for doing individual worlds without losing a continue, making it feel really unrewarding. In fact, you only unlock one single character skin in the entire game by playing all of the minigames once. I actually do like how you unlock something for playing the minigames. This is something I wish was in the original games to be honest, but I would still like to see this idea expanded and enable you to unlock a hell of a lot more than just one character skin. This is probably the only one single thing in the entire game that's better than the original games, so yeah, at least there's one improvement even if it's the most minor thing ever. You know what though, I have no idea why this game couldn't have had more unlockables. There's two brand new characters in the form of Yan Yan and Doctor, and with them being new, they could have easily been locked from the start of the game and then unlocked by fulfilling certain criteria, but no. There's not even a play point system, so there's a real lack of any form of unlockables, which kinda makes you feel like, what's the point in even playing it then? Certain levels in the HD version received slight redesigns to compensate for the more precise analog stick controls. However, these redesigns are very minimal, and you are still playing the same levels as in the original game, really. The HD version also has online leaderboards, albeit extremely flawed ones that only register the top 100 players, and two new modes, which are a sort of speedrun mode for the main game where it times you across multiple worlds of the game, and a mode where you need to do all of the minigames in a row and get a total score across all of them. These modes are a bit rubbish though to be honest, because you're still doing the same modes that were already present, but just with a minor difference, but still. I guess it's something the original doesn't have. Obviously the biggest thing changed in the HD version though, as I've already mentioned, is the controls. Now I've been going back and forth on whether this control change is a good thing or a bad thing, and the reason for this is that while having analog control is obviously better, the level design was created with motion controls in mind, and having access to normal controls in the HD version makes it even easier than it already was, and therefore less fun because there's no challenge. The original's motion controls are probably better in this situation because the level design matches the control scheme. However, the later levels are difficult even with analog controls, so this is why I'm going back and forth. I think overall, there's no real winner in the control department. Both have positives and negatives, but I think we can all agree that we would rather see a Monkey Ball game designed with normal controls over one designed with motion in mind. Another thing that really grinds my gears about Banana Blitz though, is that it just doesn't have much effort put into it. For example, the story is practically non-existent, which to be fair is the same as Super Monkey Ball 1, but with the first game it was basically a port of the arcade game, so I feel like it gets away with it. Then in Super Monkey Ball 2 and even Adventure, we had a proper story mode with tons of cutscenes and stuff going on. Then we get to Banana Blitz, and it's just a pirate guy steals some bananas and then you roll around and get them back. That's it. There's 2 cutscenes in the whole game and they're both really short and nothing happens in them. You'd think we would have seen the main bad guy interacting with all of the different bosses and sending them after you and stuff, but no. The bosses come out of nowhere and have no character or development in the slightest, and it ends up feeling really unpolished and rushed. Then there's the fact that there's only 100 levels in the game. Now that's bad enough given that Super Monkey Ball 1 and 2 had way more than that, but then you actually think about it and it doesn't really have 100 levels, does it? The last 2 worlds are completely locked and you're not going to get them unless you're a god at this game. So instantly we'll reduce the level count by 20. And then you think, well, 8 of the remaining levels are boss battles, so they don't count, and another 8 of the levels are bonus levels, so they don't really count either. So there's actually only 64 levels if we're being harsh and getting rid of the bonus levels, which is about the same as what we had in Super Monkey Ball Adventure. and the challenge mode in that game was just a side distraction from the main story mode. Whereas here in Banana Blitz, that is the main mode. There's just not enough to do in the main mode, and even Super Monkey Ball Jr. for the Game Boy Advance had more content in its main game, and that should be shameful. But there is still hope because we're yet to talk about the side content featured in Banana Blitz. You know how the older games offered not only a story mode and challenge mode, but also multiplayer functionality in the challenge mode and simultaneous multiplayer races too? Yeah, none of that is here. Outside of the minigames and main single player mode, there's nothing else to do. Well, I guess there's the credits minigame which is unlocked after playing it for the first time, but even that's kinda rubbish. It's just the same as Super Monkey Ball 2's credit minigame, only you use the Wiimote to point at the screen and move the monkey, and there's no power-ups or penalty for hitting the names. So it's a worse version of a credit minigame that we've already seen. Great. Again, even Super Monkey Ball Jr. had a unique credit minigame. While we're on this topic, there's another thing that annoyed me about this stupid credit minigame, and that is that the credits roll after you complete each individual world, rather than just appearing at the end of the game. What's the deal with this? It would be like if you got the first star in Bob-omb Battlefield in Super Mario 64, and then the credits rolled. And then they rolled again after every other star you got. I mean, what was the thought process behind this? That people would be sick of the game after one world, so they had better just constantly roll the credits? Jeez, this game is bad. Like, it's really, really bad. I don't know how they managed to make this series fall from grace so quickly. It's actually embarrassing. Still, let's take a look at these minigames. Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz HD actually only has 10 minigames, which is pretty bad considering that Super Monkey Ball 2 had 12, and they were all far more fleshed out and fun than any present in Banana Blitz HD. However, the original Banana Blitz actually has more content in this area, featuring a whopping 50 minigames, more than any other Super Monkey Ball game to date. Obviously, there's absolutely no way I can go into detail with all 50 of these, we'd be here all day, but luckily for us, or rather unluckily I guess, seeing as I put myself through all 50 of them, the vast majority of these minigames are awful, so it's not really worth going into detail regardless. It's either a matter of them being far too simple for their own good, and as a result being excruciatingly boring, like for example with Jigsaw Puzzle, which is literally just a virtual jigsaw puzzle, or Banana Thief, which is a bit more interesting, but just doesn't have any kind of depth at all, making it lack any kind of replayability. Which isn't a good trait for a minigame to have. Minigames are supposed to be infinitely replayable, that's kind of the point of them. The other problem a lot of these games had was that there were copies of something that was already featured in Wii Sports, only, of course, Wii Sports did it much better. So Monkey Bowling, Monkey Boxer, Monkey Golf, Home Run Derby, and many others just aren't worth playing due to this. Yet another thing that was irritating me going through the selection of minigames is that they all feature such drastically different control schemes, and because of that it isn't immediately obvious how you're supposed to do anything. I really struggled with games like Fruit Basket because it uses a unique control scheme where you need to rotate and pull back on the Wiimote, whereas in other similar games you would just use the pointer on the Wiimote. Then there's other minigames which use the nunchuck, just to make things even more complicated. It's not like in Wii Sports where what you do with the Wiimote reflects what you would be doing in real life, thus making it easy for anyone to grasp. Here each minigame requires you to learn a different weird control style, and because of that it's not very accessible and would probably result in these minigames never being played because of the huge commitment required to learn each individual game. I mean, another obvious issue here is the fact that there are so many minigames. If every single one of them were as fleshed out as the older games minigames were, then this would be incredible. But most of them are the same level of quality as a subpar shovelware title, and this is particularly offensive to me given the sheer quality and passion put into the older minigames featured in the series. This is the very definition of quantity over quality. I think really that pretty much sums it up. There's about 5 minigames which are at the very least functional and maybe even a bit entertaining for about a minute, but that's about all that's positive that you can say about them. There's literally no reason for these minigames to exist when Wii Sports was out and had much more in-depth and more importantly fun minigames that worked a whole lot better and showcased the technology better than any of the minigames from Banana Blitz. But hey, at least we can play the trombone. You can't do that in Wii Sports, can you? So based on everything I've said, we already know that Banana Blitz is one of the worst games in the series, but where does it go in my series ranking? Well, you won't be surprised to know that it's at the very bottom. I think this is the worst Super Monkey Ball game ever made, unless one of the ones I've not reviewed ends up being worse, but I doubt it. The reason it's worse than Banana Blitz HD is that I feel like HD does make several improvements to make it more rewarding to go through. The addition of an unlockable character and skins for all of the standard characters is a great change. The way you unlock worlds 9 and 10 without having to do everything without losing a continue is another fantastic change. And the other small additions like online leaderboards, the extra modes, and the redesigned menus are nice too. The minigames are still awful even in the HD version, but that's not really the developers' fault. They were working with the trash provided by the original game, to be fair. There's just so many issues, and they all add up to make a truly awful game. And this is particularly annoying because this is one of the best-selling Super Monkey Ball games, which is probably mostly due to it being a Wii launch title. But what this means is that people will think this is what Super Monkey Ball is because it's the only one they've played. They don't know how good Super Monkey Ball used to be before this one came along and ruined it all. And it makes me sad that there's people out there that don't know the legacy of Super Monkey Ball and are basing all of the knowledge on the series on this mess. So yeah, I hate this game and everything it stands for, and that basically sums up my thoughts on Banana Blitz. No doubt there are some people out there who actually like this game, probably quite a lot of people actually, but this is one instance where I don't get it. Normally I'm able to see why a game could be enjoyed, but here, any enjoyment you could get from this game would be incredibly short-lived, and then replaced by either boredom or frustration. So yeah, I don't think there's any real defense for how bad this game is. Anyway, next time we're going to be taking a look at Super Monkey Ball Step and Roll, the last fully original Super Monkey Ball game to be released on a home console. And yet again, this one uses motion controls, but the motion controls in this game are much different to the ones in Banana Blitz, so I guess it's time for us to dust off the old Wii balance board. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe for more stuff like this coming soon, and leave a comment down below letting me know if there's something about this game that I'm not quite seeing, or whether I'm right for hating it as much as I do. And, until next time, bye!